Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nashupraya Shurvadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. So when I looked on the internet yesterday, the verse that Gauda Chandra Prabhu spoke on was text 3 and 4. So we have text 3 there. Swadurya udra drai swajata kalpair upasprityantas charana podamnam padmam yad archa acharyahi rajam kanya Supremananam balabir vararta Swardunya yud idyair swajata kalpair Upasprishantas charano padamnam Padmam yadachre ahirajam kanyaha Supremananam balabir vararta Swardun yad udhadrar swajata kalpair Upasprishantas sharano padamna Padma yadachri ahirajam kanyaha Supremananam balabir varartaha. Svaduriyuda, by the water of the Ganges. Haradrai, being moistened. Swatita, bunch of hairs. Kalpai, situated on the head. Upashprashanta, by so touching. Charanam upadanam, the shelter of his feet. Padmam, the lotus shelter. Yat, that which. Acharati, worships. Ahiraja, the serpent king. Kanyaha, daughters. Suprema, with great devotion. Anana, various. Balibihi, paraphernalia. Parartha, being desirous of husbands. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The sages came from the highest planets down to the lower region, through the water of the Ganges, and therefore the hair on their heads was wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which are worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the serpent king when they desire good husbands. Purport. The Ganges water flows directly from the lotus feet of Vishnu, and its course runs from the highest planet of the universe down to the lowest. The sages came down from Satyaloka by taking advantage of the flowing water, a process of transportation made possible by the power of mystic yoga. If a river flows thousands and thousands of miles, a perfect yogi can at once transport himself from one place to another simply by dipping in its water. The Ganges is the only celestial river which flows throughout the universe, and great sages travel all over the universe via this sacred river. The statement that their hair was wet indicates that it was directly moistened by the water originating from the lotus feet of Vishnu, the Ganges. Whoever touches the water of the Ganges to his head surely touches the lotus feet of the Lord directly, and can become freed from all effects of sinful acts. If after taking a bath in the Ganges or being washed of all sins, a man guards himself against committing further sinful acts, then he certainly is delivered. But if he again takes up sinful activities, his bath in the Ganges is as good as that of the elephant, who nicely takes his bath in a river, but later spoils the whole thing by covering himself with the dust on the land. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gananjana Shalakoya Chakshurun Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadadmayam Dadati Svam Padantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarine Vancha Kalpatarum Bisya Kripa Sindhuva Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukund Korati Vachalam Pangolangayate Girim Yad Kripa Taraham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Bhagi Shayasya Varane Lakshmi Yasya Chavakshashi Yashyashte Hridaye Samvitam Nishim Maham Vaje. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Srila Rupa Goswami, there's a verse that says, Kritya bhavat sadya bhavasa saranabhita nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakritam hridya sadyata. And this verse explains that sadhana bhakti is that process in which one engages their mind and senses in activities which is meant to bring about bhava. And this process of going from initial faith to bhava is explained very extensively by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Rupa Goswami. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has a book called Madhurya Kandamani, and he bases this book off of one verse from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in which he explains Ato Shara Tato Sadhusanga Tato Bhajana Kriya Tato Nartha Nivritti Shat Tata Rochis Tata Shaktis Bhava and then Prema ultimately. So when one is first coming in contact with devotional service, the only medium by which they can receive faith in the process of Krishna consciousness is through the association of Vaishnavas. Krishna Bhakti Mula Hoya Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Premi Janma Teno Puna Mukhya Anga, that the root of Krishna Bhakti is the association of sadhus. So one either has to render service to those sadhus or they have to receive some special mercy from those sadhus, whether the sadhu simply wishes them well in their devotional progress, speaks some important instructions, or even just casts an affectionate glance, wishing them well. Somehow, someone has to receive the kripa of a sadhu or engage in the service of a sadhu inadvertently. So, if one receives faith, it's understood that they've received the seed of devotional service. Brahmanda Bhamite Kona Bhagavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. And upon receiving this seed of devotional service, one has to nurture it. Because just as you have to take care of anything that you plant and grow, it requires attention and care. So what this verse is talking about, particularly the latter section of the purport, is a comment that Srila Prabhupada makes a lot in regards to people taking up spiritual practices, but maintaining material attachments in the process of engaging in a spiritual practice, which counteracts the effects of those spiritual activities. So, for instance, there's a verse in there's not a verse, but there is a verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu which explains that one of the symptoms of one who's engaging in pure devotional service is klesha agni, which means the sufferings of the mind, adhyatmika, the sufferings of higher divine beings, adidaivika, and adibodhika, the suffering of other living entities, are counteracted simply by engaging in the process of devotional service. But if one engages in the process of devotional service according to mental concoction, then one won't actually be able to taste the full fruit of a devotional practice. So this verse that Rupa Goswami gives is Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatrika Vinidvina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Upayaiva Vikalpate. That in order for devotional practice to actually bear its ultimate fruit, in order for one to make complete progress on the journey from having initial faith to having the full blossoming of the ultimate goal of our devotional practices, bhava, one needs to engage in devotional service according to the Shastras. And if one neglects those Shastras in the name of modern antiquity, for the purpose of being relevant to a modern socio-economic setting. Basically, one tries to adjust the principles of devotional service in order to make them relevant to the moral atmosphere of that particular time. So when one tries to do that, they're no longer engaging in the conclusions of devotional service, they're actually engaging in a mentally concocted form of devotional service which is known as manodharma. And the difficulty with engaging in a devotional practice that's on that level is that our whole entanglement in the material world is due to this mental activity. Icha dvesa samutena davant mohena bharata. Sarva bhutani samoham sagra yanti parantapa. That living entities entangled in the material world are driven principally by the mind that's accepting and rejecting the objects of the senses which they find appealing to their senses and objects of the senses which they reject. So the principles and morals which one accepts today as being of a high moral standard, which one accepts as to be a good thing, in the future one could reject as being a bad thing. So the whole conclusion of the Vedanta, the whole conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is that beyond our mental concoction of what is right and wrong, there's the conclusion of Krishna. And that's ultimately the conclusions that devotees have to accept. And that's the conclusion that the Kumaras are trying to approach the Lord for. Because they understand that Mama Ishvam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manasha strani indriyani prakriti stani karsati. That due to the living entity's entanglement with its mind, which has been influenced by various impressions of sense gratification since time immemorial, the living entity is not able to make a choice in which to understand his ultimate welfare. So one has to accept the conclusions of Shastra in order to actually make advancement. And we see that any time that these principles are rejected on a mass scale by the collection of devotees, then what is produced is what's known as an apasampradaya. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Bhaktivinoda Thakur worked very, very hard to weed out the misconceptions of devotional service which were mentally concocted in order to establish the proper conclusions of Siddhanta. And through properly establishing those conclusions of Siddhanta and passing them into the future, they were actually empowered to spread Krishna consciousness in a significant way. Because Krishna won't allow a deviant philosophy to take root in society on a mass scale. The only thing that Krishna will allow to influence society on a large scale in terms of the conclusions of Shastra, or anything that's a semblance of those conclusions of Shastra, is the pure conclusions of Siddhanta, the pure tattva which is coming in the line of the authorized acharyas. So this is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tat shradadana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya pashyantyatmani atmanam shuti mani bhakti shuti grahinita. That by hearing the conclusions of bhakti, which one has extracted from the Vedanta Sutra, then one can actually make progress in the process of devotional service. And the effect of that is that when one actually hears from those who are representing that pure transcendental sound vibration coming in parampara. Too close or too far? Okay, yeah. So if one is engaging, if one is hearing a vibration which is coming in that pure lineage, then the result is very fruitful. And the result is yasya vaishyamanayam krishne paramapurushe bhakti upadyate pumsam soka moha bhayapaha. That all of one's soka, moha, and bhaya. Soka means material lamentation. Moha means material illusion. And bhaya means fear. Fearfulness of this material existence. Fearfulness of personal relationship in the foreground of positive spiritual life. Having fear of this, having illusion due to involvement with the material energy, and lamentation due to existing within this material entanglement is completely eradicated. And what's established? Bhakti upadyate pumsam, that bhakti is born in the heart, that simply by hearing the transcendental vibration which is coming in the line of Guru Parampara, in an authorized, unbroken chain of pure truth, then that truth will be imparted in the living entity, and the result will be all anarthas will be removed from the heart. This is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tata rajas tamo bhava kama loba dayaschaye chetan atir anaditvam stitvam sattve prasidyati. That all the contamination of the modes of passion and the modes of ignorance will be eradicated from the heart, which are the things that is preventing us from making advancement. But if one takes up a practice of devotional service and adopts the half-hen logic, they accept some of the principles of devotional service, but they reject cultural intricacies, or they reject pancharatrika intricacies, then what will happen is they'll only get half of the result. which means that the full efficacy of the process of devotional service won't blossom in their heart. And they will be stuck on the platform of Nartha Vritti, and they won't be able to progress to the stage of actually being fixed in pure devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And due to being stuck on the platform of the Nartha Vritti, they will become discouraged, and having not obtained a proper Artha Pravritti, a positive direction in the foreground of the transcendental realm of reality, then one will have to fall back into the material pool once again. This is explained by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in the 16th chapter, that those who reject the conclusions of Shastra and act according to their own whims, they can't attain the ultimate goal, nor can they achieve any positive result. So it is our duty as representatives of the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya to uphold the principles of pure devotional service with scrutiny and with attention, because by upholding those principles purely and being positive examples of those principles in society, then we can actually effect a complete transformation within the heart of society. Tat visargo janatov cha viplavo. That we can actually turn things around, viplavo. That the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when represented properly, can actually completely turn society around. And to the degree that we don't see society being moving in that direction, we can understand that the general mass of society has deviated from these principles of pure devotion. So being devotees of Krishna, being representatives of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being representatives of Srila Prabhupada, we have a very grave duty to contemplate the conclusions of Siddhanta. Siddhanta bolya chitte nakara alash, iha hoite Krishna lage, sudrit manash. Uphold those principles of Siddhanta and not consider them controversial because of our material conditioning. Because by contemplating those conclusions of Siddhanta, by taking in those conclusions of Siddhanta seriously and applying them and propagating them in society at large, we actually develop attachment for the lotus feet of Krishna. Siddhanta bole chitte nakara alash, iha hoite Krishna lage, sudrit manash. Sudrit manash means our faith becomes very strong. So we have to be determined in following the principles of Shastra very seriously. And by following those principles of Shastra very seriously and being in the company of proper devotees, then what will happen is tam nama rupa charisasu sukirtananu smrid yor karmena rasanam manasina yojat tis tanvraje tanunuragi jananugami kalam yatet akilam ityupatesha shadam. We will actually be situating ourselves in an atmosphere where we can take advantage of the ultimate instruction of Rupa Goswami to fill our day 24/7 in the activities of pure devotion, of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, without being disturbed by the mentally concocted deviations of devotional service which prevent us from making full progress. So the more we align ourselves with the conclusions of Shastra, the more the modes of passion and the modes of ignorance settle within our mind and are cleared out. And then we are actually able to absorb ourselves in that instruction of Rupa Goswami and actually begin to make genuine progress toward the ultimate goal of life, of developing love for Krishna in Vrindavan. Aradayo Bhagavan Vrajeshas Tanayasta Dhamma Vrindavanam. That Krishna in Vrindavan is the ultimate object of worship, and his abode Vrindavan is just as worshipful. So the more we align ourselves with the message of the Bhagavatam, which is completely capable of helping us develop that love, then we will actually make rapid progress. To the degree we're not making progress, it's due to neglecting the principles of Shastra, whether through offenses or whether through niyam agraha, being lazy in the matter of trying to uphold them. So, if there's any questions or comments, we can have a discussion. Okay, I'll repeat the question. I'll repeat it. Yeah, this is explained by Lord Shiva actually in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, Narayana Parayana Sarve Nakutasta Nabidyate Swarga Apavarga Narkesu Apitulyatha Darshanam. He explains that those who are Narayana Parayana, completely sold out to the lotus feet of Krishna. That Swarga Apavarga, Swarga means the heavenly planets. Narkeshu means the hellish planets. Apitulyatha Darshanam, that they're always seeing Krishna. So whether they're in a hellish condition or whether they're in a heavenly condition, they're always experiencing Krishna, they're always with Krishna. And actually, the service attitude of a devotee isn't necessarily interested in trying to see Krishna, but serving Krishna in such a way that Krishna wants to see him. So a devotee is willing to accept any condition, and a devotee's intelligence is such that any circumstance that he's put in, he can utilize the conclusions of the Shastra in order to make it favorable to the execution of devotional service. So whether one is put in a terrible hellish condition, due to their internal absorption and due to their fidelity to the conclusions of the Shastra, that place actually becomes Vrindavan. Bhavavida bhagavatas tirtha bhuta swayambhava tirtha kurvanti tirtani svatastena katabrata. That those who carry the conclusions of the Shastra in their heart, they're actually places of pilgrimage. So their association is what's worth seeking. Even if one is living in Los Angeles, California, which is so far from being a favorable place for executing pure spiritual principles according to the conclusions of what the atmosphere was in Satya Yuga. Due to upholding those principles, then one takes advantage of that association. They're actually in the most favorable condition. But even if one goes to Vrindavan, and there's a verse that says, Yasyatma bhuti kunape tridatuke swadi kalijesu boma ijadi yatirtha bhuti salilena kahichit janeshu avijeshu sa eva gokara. That those who consider this body to be themselves, those who consider their relatives to be permanent, and those who consider the land to be worshipable, and those who go to the places of pilgrimage just to take a bath, but not actually take advantage of the association of the saintly people that live there, they're actually no better than an animal, an ass or a cow. So the best thing that one can do is find the association of devotees and connect with that pure transcendental vibration which is descending from Krishna himself. If one is in that circumstance, whether they're in Vrindavan, whether they're in Los Angeles, they're in the perfect situation, they're properly situated. No, the realest place is in the association of devotees who have properly assimilated the conclusions of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And if one is receiving that vibration in a humble state of mind, with a submissive attitude and a disposition to serve, that is the best situation to be in. Yes. Yeah, so actually he says, is there any escape from attachment? Because even if you are engaging in detachment, you can still be attached to detachment. Yeah, you're attached strongly to the idea of detachment. Yeah, materially. So that's why Krishna says, first verse of 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Anashakta Sivishayan, no. Maya Sakta Manapartha, yeah, I'm forgetting it right now, but I'm forgetting it. It's passing my head. Anyways, in the first, you can look at the verse at the end of class. First verse of the Bhagavad Gita. It says that Krishna tells Arjuna to hear about me and become attached to me. So the conclusion of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is don't try to artificially engage in detachment for the sake of detachment, but actually develop a positive thing to be attached to. So when one engages in the process of devotional service, Vasudeve Bhagavati, Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, Jnana Asha Shuvairagyam, Jnanam Chadyata Hoitukam, that when one develops attachment to Krishna, one naturally develops knowledge of Krishna's glory and the need to surrender to Krishna immediately. Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Man Prapadyate. That real jnana is that one has understood that Krishna is telling, Mamekam, only surrender to me. So when one understands that, then when they develop that knowledge, then naturally detachment develops. So real detachment comes from being attached to Krishna. And detached from Maya, exactly. Actually, one has to be attached to something. So rather than being attached to Maya and then trying to artificially become detached, one should simply try to develop attachment for Krishna and everything will follow. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaura Premanande.